What happens when a heart forged in darkness is confronted by a light it never knew it craved? Can a man who deals in death ever truly learn to live for love? You tell me. In the gilded heart of the city, where secrets were traded like currency and loyalty was sealed in blood, sat the restaurant Il Sovrano. It was the undisputed territory of Vincenzo Romano, a man known in the whispering alleys and gleaming boardrooms only as the Shadow. His empire was built on fear, respect, and the quiet, brutal efficiency of his will. Tonight, he sat at his customary table in the back, the fabric of his pinstripe suit a stark contrast to the crimson velvet of the booth. His consigliere Giorgio sat opposite him, nursing a glass of scotch, while his cousin and underboss Riccardo leaned against the wall, a venomous smirk playing on his lips. The air was thick with the aroma of garlic, truffle, and unspoken power. Every clink of silverware, every murmur of conversation from the city's elite, was background noise to the silent dominion Vincenzo held over the room. Then the heavy oak doors creaked open, letting in a sliver of the cold night and a girl who looked as if she were made of it. She was thin, her clothes little more than layered rags, and her face, though smudged with grime, held eyes of a startling, defiant blue. She didn't cower. She didn't beg. She simply stood there, a ghost at the feast, her gaze fixed on the half-eaten plates of pasta and bread left on a hastily abandoned table. Riccardo straightened, his hand instinctively going to the bulge under his jacket. "Get her out," he hissed to a nearby guard. The girl, Liliana, flinched as the two colossal men moved toward her, but her eyes never left the food. The hunger in her was a physical thing, a hollow ache that overshadowed the fear. As a hand clamped down on her shoulder, she found her voice, small but clear, directing it not at the guards, but at the man who commanded them. "Please," she said, her voice raspy from disuse, her gaze finally meeting Vincenzo's across the opulent room. "Can I take the scraps home?" A hush fell. Every diner froze, their forks halfway to their mouths. To speak to Vincenzo Romano without being spoken to was a death wish. To ask him for garbage was an act of madness. Riccardo laughed, a short, ugly sound. The nerve. Throw her in the alley. But Vincenzo raised a single manicured hand. The motion was slight, almost lazy, yet it stopped the world. His eyes, the color of storm clouds, narrowed on the girl. He saw no guile in her, no trickery. He saw only a raw, desperate honesty that was more valuable than any jewel in that room. He saw the fire flickering behind the fear. He rose from his seat, the movement fluid and predatory, and the room held its collective breath as he approached her. He towered over her, a monument of tailored wool and lethal intent. He looked from her tattered shoes to her defiant chin. "Your name," he commanded, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through the floorboards. "Liliana," she whispered, her heart hammering against her ribs. He savored the name for a moment, then gave a sharp nod to his men. "Release her." They stepped back as if burned. Vincenzo gestured to the chair opposite his own. "You will not have scraps," he declared, his voice carrying through the silent restaurant. "You will sit. And you will eat." The shock was a palpable wave. Riccardo's jaw tightened, his face flushing with fury and disbelief. Giorgio simply raised an eyebrow, his expression unreadable. Liliana stared, uncomprehending. This man, who radiated a danger so profound it felt like a physical chill, was offering her a seat at his table? She hesitated, her survival instinct screaming at her to run. But the primal claw of hunger was stronger. Slowly, she walked to the booth, her every step watched by 100 pairs of eyes. She slid onto the plush velvet, feeling utterly alien in this world of crystal and linen. Vincenzo returned to his seat, his gaze never leaving her. "Bring her the lamb," he ordered the petrified waiter. "And a bottle of the Barolo. The best one." He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper only she could hear. "In my world, Liliana, we do not settle for scraps." The act of kindness was so jarring, so contrary to the man's reputation, that it felt more threatening than any weapon. It was a display of absolute power, the power to break all rules, even his own. As a plate of perfectly roasted lamb and potatoes was placed before her, fragrant steam rising to meet her, Liliana understood she hadn't just been offered a meal. She had been claimed. The entire time she ate, devouring the food with a desperate, almost painful urgency, Vincenzo watched her. He didn't speak, he just observed, his sharp gaze cataloging the tremor in her hands, the way she closed her eyes in bliss at the first taste of warm bread, the fierce pride that kept her from weeping with relief. Ricardo seethed in the corner, his contempt a palpable force. "Vincenzo, this is absurd," he muttered, stepping closer. "A street rat in Il Sovrano? It's a mockery." Vincenzo's eyes flickered to his cousin, the warmth they held for Liliana instantly replaced by glacial ice. "She has more honor in her little finger, Cugino, than you have in your entire body. She asked for what she needed. You only take what you want." The rebuke was sharp and public, a slap that left a flush on Ricardo's cheeks. He retreated, his eyes promising retribution. When Liliana had finished, a plate cleaner than any dishwasher could have managed, she finally looked at her host. "Thank you," she said, the words feeling inadequate. "It was the best meal of my life." He gave a slight, almost imperceptible smile. It transformed his harsh features, hinting at a man long buried beneath the weight of his crown. "It will not be your last." He made a decision in that moment, one born of impulse and a strange, protective instinct he hadn't felt in years. This girl, with her untamed spirit in her honest eyes, was a flicker of light in his monochrome world. He wanted to keep it, to shield it from the wind. "You will not return to the streets," he stated. It wasn't a question. "You will come with me. You will have a room, clothes, food. You will be safe." Liliana's fork clattered onto her plate. I can't. I don't know you." "You know that I am the man who fed you when you were starving," he replied, his voice soft but edged with steel. "That is all you need to know for now. My world is dangerous, but the streets are crueler. With me you will be protected." He was offering her a gilded cage, and they both knew it. But a cage with warmth and food was infinitely better than the cold freedom of starvation. Giorgio, ever the pragmatist, leaned in. "Boss, bringing an outsider into the fold. It's a risk." Vincenzo's gaze didn't waver from Liliana. "Some risks," he said softly, "are worth taking." He extended a hand across the table. It was large, scarred, a hand that had undoubtedly wrought both creation and destruction. After a long, heart-stopping moment, Liliana placed her trembling hand in his. His grip was firm, possessive, and surprisingly warm. As he led her out of the restaurant, past the stunned onlookers and his furious cousin, Liliana felt a terrifying mix of dread and hope. She was a captive, a charity case, a curiosity. But as she looked up at the stone-faced Mafia Don, she saw something else in his eyes, something beyond pity or power. It was a flicker of recognition, as if in her he had found a missing piece of his own shattered soul. The Romano villa was a palace of marble and shadows, perched on a hill overlooking the city lights like a predator watching its prey. For Liliana it was overwhelming. Servants scurried away from her, their eyes wide. She was given a suite of rooms larger than any place she had ever called home, with a closet full of clothes in silks and cashmeres that felt alien against her skin. She was a wildflower transplanted into a sterile, opulent greenhouse, and she felt herself beginning to wilt. Vincenzo gave her space, but his presence was a constant hum in the background. He would watch her from doorways as she explored the vast library, or find excuses to pass the gardens when she sat by the stone fountain, its cherubs weeping silent tears. He was studying her, trying to understand the strange peace she brought to the violent chaos of his home. Giorgio warned him daily. "She makes you soft, Vincenzo. The men are talking. Ricardo uses it, calls it a weakness." Vincenzo would simply stare out at the city, a glass of amber liquid in his hand. "Her compassion is not a weakness, Giorgio. It is a strength I had forgotten exists. It reminds me that we are men, not just monsters." Their conversations were stilted at first, brief exchanges in the grand hallways. He would ask if she needed anything. She would thank him and say she had more than she could ever have dreamed of. But her eyes told a different story. They were the eyes of a caged bird, grateful for the seed but desperate for the sky. One evening he found her in the ballroom, staring up at the colossal crystal chandelier. She wore a simple blue dress one of the maids had found for her, and in the moonlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows, she looked ethereal. "It's beautiful," she said without turning, sensing his presence. "But it must be lonely, being the only star in the room." He walked to stand beside her, his powerful frame casting a long shadow over her. "I have never considered it." he admitted. I do not think of things as lonely, only as useful or dangerous. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard, she whispered, finally turning to face him. Her blue eyes searched his, piercing through the armor he wore so expertly. Everything has a heart, Vincenzo. Even a house. Even a man everyone calls the Shadow. Her use of his name, so bold and familiar, sent a jolt through him. No one called him Vincenzo, not anymore. He was boss, Don Romano, the Shadow. Hearing his given name from her lips was both a shock and a strange comfort. Ricardo's jealousy festered, turning into a poison that seeped into the villa's foundations. He saw the way Vincenzo looked at Liliana, with an unguarded tenderness that made him sick. He saw her as the key to his own ascension. If he could prove she was a liability, he could fracture Vincenzo's authority and seize power. He began his campaign subtly, with whispers to the capos and cruel, cutting remarks to Liliana when he thought no one was listening. One afternoon, he cornered her in the rose garden. Enjoying the palace, little stray? He sneered, blocking her path. You should. The master has a fondness for new toys. But he always breaks them eventually. Liliana stood her ground. He has shown me more kindness than I have ever known. I am not a toy, Ricardo laughed. Kindness? Mio Dio. He put a roof over your head to feel like a saint. He is a killer, Dolcezza. And when the time comes, he will sacrifice you, his little pet, to save his own skin. Just as he reached out to grab her arm, a hand like a steel vice clamped down on his shoulder. Vincenzo had appeared as if from the very shadows of the cypress trees, his face a mask of cold fury. Touch her again, Ricardo. Vincenzo's voice was lethally quiet. And you will learn that I am not a saint. You will pull back a bloody stump. He shoved his cousin back, placing himself between Ricardo and Liliana. The protective gesture was so primal, so absolute, it stole her breath. Ricardo paled, all his bravado vanishing in the face of Vincenzo's pure rage. He scurried away, muttering threats under his breath. Vincenzo turned to Liliana, his eyes scanning her for any sign of harm. Are you all right, Passerato? My little sparrow. The endearment slipped out unbidden. She simply nodded, her eyes wide. In that moment, the fear she felt was not for herself, but for the darkness she had seen in him, a darkness he had unleashed to protect her. That night, a storm raged outside, mirroring the turmoil within the villa. Liliana was woken by a scream, a raw, agonized sound that was cut off as quickly as it began. She slipped out of her room and followed the echo down the corridor to Vincenzo's study. The door was ajar. Peeking inside, she saw him standing by the window, his back to her, his shoulders rigid. His hand was clenched so tightly around a whiskey glass that his knuckles were white. He was breathing heavily, lost in a memory that was clearly torturing him. This was not the Shadow, the untouchable Don. This was a man drowning in his own past. Forgetting all fear, she pushed the door open and stepped inside. Vincenzo. He spun around, his eyes wild, a cornered animal ready to strike. But when he saw it was her, the ferocity in his expression fractured, revealing a deep, profound pain. You should not be here, he rasped. I'm not afraid of you, she said softly, taking a tentative step closer. I see you. The man, not the monster. She reached his desk and gently took the glass from his unresisting hand, placing it on the polished wood. Then she did something no one had dared to do in over a decade. She reached out and placed her small, warm hand on his arm. The contact was electric. Through the fine wool of his suit, he felt a warmth spread through him, chasing away the icy grip of his nightmare. He looked down at her hand, then up at her face, his expression one of utter disbelief. He had been betrayed by family, by the woman he was supposed to marry, a betrayal that had cemented his heart in ice. He had learned that vulnerability was a death sentence. Yet here was this girl who had nothing, offering him a comfort he didn't believe he deserved. They all see the crown, he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. You see the man wearing it. I see the man who fed a starving girl, she corrected gently. The rest is just noise. He covered her hand with his own, his thumb stroking her skin. It was a moment of profound intimacy, more powerful than any kiss. In the quiet of the storm-tossed night, the ruthless Mafia Don and the girl from the streets found a fragile, unspoken understanding. But in the world of shadows, Even the smallest flicker of light attracts the most dangerous predators. Ricardo, watching from a hidden alcove down the hall, saw it all. He saw the tenderness, the connection, the weakness. And he knew exactly how he would use it to burn Vincenzo's world to the ground. His plan was simple and brutal. He leaked information to the rival Falcone family about a lucrative shipping route, making it look like a security failure on Vincenzo's part. He blamed the new lax atmosphere in the villa, the Don's distraction with his pet. As expected, the Falcones hit the shipment, a brazen act of war. Blood was spilled. The peace Vincenzo had carefully maintained for years was shattered overnight. The villa became a fortress. Guards patrolled the halls, their faces grim. The scent of roses in the garden was replaced by the metallic tang of fear. Vincenzo was forced back into the role he knew best, the ruthless commander. He was decisive, cold, and brilliant, but Liliana could see the toll it was taking. The man who had shared a moment of vulnerability with her was gone, replaced once more by the shadow. During a heated strategy meeting with his capos, Ricardo made his move. "The Falcones are emboldened because they see weakness," he declared, his voice ringing with false passion. "They see you distracted, cousin. This girl, she is a liability. We must show them there are no chinks in our armor." He was planting the seeds of doubt, suggesting Liliana was the cause of their troubles. That night, the war came to them. The Falcones launched a direct assault on the villa, a shocking breach of unspoken rules. Gunfire erupted, shattering the stained glass windows. Alarms blared. Liliana was woken by a guard bursting into her room. "We have to move you, Signorina. The Don's orders." He led her through a secret passage, but as they rounded a corner, they were met by Ricardo. "I'll take her from here," Ricardo said, shoving the guard aside. "I'll get her to the safe room." He grabbed Liliana's arm, his grip bruising. His eyes held a triumphant, terrifying glint. He wasn't saving her, he was capturing her. He dragged her through the chaos, not toward safety, but toward a secluded wing of the house. "You've been very useful," he sneered, his plan becoming terrifyingly clear. "Once the Falcones kill you, Vincenzo will be broken. He will be reckless. And I will be there to pick up the pieces of his kingdom." In the main hall, Vincenzo fought with a savage grace, a whirlwind of calculated violence. But a frantic call came over his radio from Giorgio, who had been monitoring the security feeds. "Boss, it's Ricardo. He's not protecting the girl. He's taking her to the West Terrace. He set this up. He's been talking to the Falcones for weeks." The betrayal hit Vincenzo with the force of a physical blow, colder and sharper than any bullet. He roared, a sound of pure, primal fury, and abandoned the main fight, carving a path through the firefight toward the West Wing. He found them on the terrace, the storm still raging. Ricardo held a gun to Liliana's head. "It's over, cousin," he screamed over the wind. "Your reign ends tonight. Your sentimentality was your downfall." Liliana, terrified but not broken, met Vincenzo's eyes. There was no pleading in her gaze, only a fierce, unwavering belief in him. Vincenzo lowered his own weapon slightly. "Let her go, Ricardo. This is between us. There is no us." Ricardo shrieked, his composure cracking. "There is only me." He made a fatal error. For a split second, he glanced away, looking for his Falcone allies who were supposed to be providing covering fire. In that instant, Vincenzo moved. He wasn't the shadow, he was lightning. He threw a concealed knife, a silver streak in the stormy night. It embedded itself in Ricardo's gun hand, causing him to scream and drop the weapon. Liliana shoved him away, stumbling toward Vincenzo. Vincenzo didn't hesitate. He closed the distance, his fists a blur. The fight was short, brutal, and decisive. He disarmed his cousin and slammed him against the balustrade, the stone cracking under the impact. The remaining Falcone assassins, seeing their inside man defeated, retreated into the night. The battle was over. The immediate danger had passed, but the air on the terrace was thick with the poison of treachery. Vincenzo held Ricardo by the throat, his face a mask of stone, his eyes burning with a cold fire that promised a slow, painful death. The family code was absolute. Betrayal was punishable by one thing only. The men gathered, their faces grim, waiting for the inevitable sentence. But then Liliana stepped forward, placing a hand on Vincenzo's arm. the same gesture she had used in his study. It was not a plea for mercy for Ricardo, but a plea for Vincenzo's soul. "Don't let him take anything else from you," she whispered, her voice carrying over the wind. "Don't let him take the man I see." Vincenzo looked from his treacherous cousin gasping for air to the woman who had walked into his life and shown him what it meant to feel again. He saw the truth in her words. Killing Ricardo now in a fit of rage would be a victory for the darkness. Justice had to be served, but it would be his justice tempered and controlled. He released his cousin who collapsed sputtering. "Take him to the cellar," Vincenzo commanded his men. "He will face the family's judgment tomorrow. But he will face it with a clear head, knowing that his greed failed." He turned his back on his cousin and pulled Liliana into his arms, holding her tightly against him, burying his face in her hair, inhaling her scent as if it were the only clean thing left in his world. She didn't flinch from the blood on his suit or the violence clinging to him. She simply held him back, a silent anchor in his storm. The dawn broke over a battered but standing villa. The war was not over, but the traitor within had been excised. In the aftermath, Vincenzo Romano was a changed man. He had seen the precipice and, with Liliana's help, had chosen not to jump. He summoned her to his study, the same room where she had first comforted him. The morning light streamed in, catching the dust motes dancing in the air. He stood by the window, not as a king surveying his domain, but as a man contemplating his future. On his desk sat two objects: a velvet pouch heavy with jewels and cash, and a single perfect red rose, its petals still dewy from the garden. "You are free, Liliana," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "Ricardo was right about one thing. My world is dangerous. I brought that danger to your door. You can take this," he gestured to the pouch, "and leave. Go anywhere in the world. I will ensure you are safe, that no one ever bothers you again. You can have a normal life. The life you deserve." He turned to face her, his heart a leaden weight in his chest. This was the hardest thing he had ever done. He was offering to let go of the only light he had known in years. Liliana looked at the pouch, then at the rose. She walked to the desk, her steps sure and steady. She pushed the pouch of jewels aside and picked up the single rose, its thorns brushing her fingers. "A normal life would be a life without you," she said, her voice trembling slightly but full of conviction. "I don't want it." She looked up at him, her blue eyes shining with tears and a love so powerful it took his breath away. "I saw a man who fed a starving girl. I saw a man who protected her. I saw a man who fought his own demons. I don't want a cage, gilded or otherwise. I want the man who holds the key." A slow smile spread across Vincenzo's face. A genuine soul-deep smile that reached his storm-cloud eyes and turned them into a summer sky. He crossed the room and gently took her face in his hands. "Anima mia," he whispered, "my soul. You are not my weakness. You are my reason." He leaned down and kissed her, a kiss that was not about possession or power, but about promise. A promise of a new future, one they would build together. It would still be a world of shadows and danger, but now it would also be a world with light, with love and with hope. And so I ask you again, can love truly conquer all? Can it redeem a soul forged in the fires of the underworld? Perhaps the answer lies not in changing the man, but in giving him a reason to become the best version of himself. What do you think? Let us know your most epic love story in the comments below. And don't forget to share this story if you believe in the power of a love that defies all odds.